For those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting before, my name is Eric Bosch. I'm the Director of Software Development at DFNet. Like many, all of the software team located in the southwestern part of Ontario, Canada, which if you look at a map and you find the Great Lakes in Canada, Hamilton, Southwest Ontario would be at the very left tip of Lake Ontario. So we're an easy half hour, 45-minute drive to Niagara Falls. We're another easy 45-minute drive to Toronto. Montreal is about a 5-hour drive. That's where we are. You've seen a few of these images already, and I just wanted to say it's so nice to see everyone. I'm not using the gallery view at the moment, but there are many familiar faces and also many new faces. I would have enjoyed meeting you out in front of the meeting room and chatting. We will do that again soon. I want to thank you all for sharing your time. Time is important. We all appreciate, I think, even more since the pandemic started, just how valuable our time is. So thank you for sharing your time with our community. Hopefully everyone has had the chance to shake off their jet lag, right? We all feeling good. We've got out of our pajamas. There is coffee in the room next to you if you need it. Help yourself. But all kidding aside, one of the bonuses of this format is that it levels the playing field, as it were, for all of us. We've all traveled the same amount to get here. DFUG is a time to share and learn. When I was preparing, I went back and looked at some of the content from our earlier meetings, and I was rewarded. It was rewarding for me to confirm that several earlier DFUG topics have been addressed in our software in DF Discover features, and that many topics continue to be relevant and actively discussed even now in 2021. I encourage you to offer your insights, share your experiences. Even if you're not a presenter, put your thoughts in the chat. We will have breaks in the middle of each day. Stay online and we'll be happy to chat with you during the breaks. As you're listening to the presentations, I encourage you to think about, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my trials? How does this apply to my employer, the company that I work for? And even if you can't think of, how does this apply to me right now? Could this apply to you in the future? So keep that in mind. And again, just enjoy these 2 days. I'm certainly thankful that you're here with us. Okay, so what is hybrid and decentralized? What is decentralized and hybrid? And so on. Is it, I don't know. Our industry is asking this question, right? You hear it, you hear this topic, you see it written about everywhere. I will be honest with you and say that right now, I have more questions than answers. I know some of the answers. There are speakers you'll hear from these next 2 days who have other answers. You know some of the answers, so it would be great to hear from you and share those. This is why we're here as a community. We can figure this out. What is decentralized? What is hybrid? In case, I'm not sure how much of my camera you can see, I am a hand talker. So do not be distracted by the hand that is coming across the screen. That's just me. So the other question I want to ask about what is decentralized and hybrid is it both? Is it either? Is hybrid an adjective describing decentralization? Is decentralization an adjective describing hybrid? You probably have your opinions. I have my opinions. I suggest that it's yes for both. So it's decentralized and hybrid decentralization, and decentralized hybridness. If there is, that's my word. I'll take ownership of that. If we look at the words separately, Decentralized. Decentralized means that it's everywhere. All activities are available everywhere. We have lots of great examples, right? If we think outside of our industry, what's an easy example that comes to mind for me at least is Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin tries to address the problem of decentralized currency so that there is no particular bank that owns all of your currency or has its hands on all of your currency. Big banks prefer centralization. If you live in a country where there's municipal and or employee credit unions, that's decentralization, right? And then Bitcoin, and there are, somebody will help me, I don't know the terminology, but the idea of shared wealth where there's all these sort of micro economies going on. So Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies take decentralization and put it on steroids to achieve some control and decentralization of wealth. So the other word, hybrid. And looking at the image on the left, it's not easy making a full electric vehicle. It's now easier, wasn't easier 10 years ago, but it's now easier to make a hybrid vehicle that takes advantage of battery technology where it makes sense and gas otherwise. The beauty of hybrid in this case is you pick the solution that works best. In the same way, it's not easy running a fully decentralized trial, right? So the hybrid component helps there. For EVs, there are technology, there are regulatory, and all sorts of advances that need to be made. Same thing with clinical trials. So in our case, as clinical trialists and people conducting clinical trials, hybrid is about making the best use of our available technologies, creating a solution that might not otherwise be possible. So in the image on the right, the cat is greater than the sum of its parts. And you have a cat in the end, right? We don't really care that the legs are all the same and the ears are the same. Importantly, we have a cat at the end. So where we may have just seen parts, we now have a solution. If you were at DFUG 2018, Gavin was kind enough to remind me when I asked him about his talk where he mentioned the Rolex. And that to me is a perfect example of taking advantage of different solutions. And the Rolex was basically paper CRFs that got spoiled by liquid being poured over them. There's technology involved. In the end, in Gavin's story, he actually came flying in with a cape and saved the day. That is Gavin, the hero. But the point there is that in those experiences, having paper, having other technology together actually made the day and allowed the trial to complete, even though in some cases the paper had been spoiled, but was recoverable, and the technology may not have been. So having both is helpful.
It was the paper CRFs that were the hero, Eric, not me.
Now I'm sad. I thought it was you, Gavin. I'm gonna have to return my Gavin superhero doll. So we think about decentralization in the sense of decentralizing data sources, which is the last point in this slide. But there's also lots of other things, right? There's people decentralization, as we're all experiencing, right? We can do it. I didn't think we could do it at the beginning of 2020. We can do it. While decentralizing, we can create global knowledge, share responsibilities, build centers of excellence almost, right? Let people have authority. That's what Bitcoin is doing, letting people have authority over their currency, over their money. Take advantage of the opinions on a global scale. Take advantage of skills on a global scale. Take advantage of, I can't even, here's a question. What would it look like if we were all in the same time zone? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We'd all be working 9 to 5 in the exact same time zone, but in very different places of the world. So take advantage of, in decentralization, take advantage of time zones, take advantage of locations. And yes, decentralization, you move the data sources closer to the subject. There are a few people at DFNet, both in software support and in data management, who are instrumental in the conduct of a clinical trial in Burundi. Burundi is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In this study, this particular study, patients are seen in their village, and their village had infrastructure brought to it so that data could be collected in the village. A local satellite transmitter was installed so that the DF Discover data could be beamed to the cloud. And then DM staff in Seattle and staff of the sponsor in Antwerp, Belgium, are then able to review the data and conduct their clinical trial monitoring. I think that's a great example of decentralization. So we talked a little bit about decentralization, we talked a little bit about hybrid. Why both? And it's hard, just like an EV, right? It's hard to be fully decentralized. Can you fully decentralize informed consent? Can you fully decentralize informed consent? Well, as Lisa and Daryl alluded to, yes, there are solutions that are available and more are becoming available. If you're distributing a pharmaceutical agent or a treatment, can it be distributed with as required by the manufacturer, and can you get it to people? Can you get it to people? Think of the COVID cold chain, right? I read some crazy stats about the work that was needed to decentralize that. We can do it. And then when you think about decentralizing treatments as part of a clinical trial, what's the accountability? How does that work? How do you ensure at the end that the drug can be reconciled? So think about those things, or we need to think about those things. We do remote monitoring. This has been, I think, one of the strengths of DataFax and now DF Discover that was basically built for this idea, right? That I have the data and I can also see the source of that data. So monitoring in a decentralized way is pretty straightforward. We also have patient safety considerations, right? Can you fully decentralize that? If somebody needs to go to a clinic, does that have to get reported? What's that reporting chain? So there are lots of considerations in doing a fully decentralized solution, which is part of the reason I think that hybrid and decentralized is commonly spoken about now. In decentralization, we also want to think about decentralizing management, right? We want to think about decentralizing control. Think about Bitcoin again. We want to think about taking advantages of geography, using culture, local culture to the benefit of the clinical trial. Think about the regulatory challenges of decentralization. Can they be overcome? Think about security, right? And in the end, I hope we can all be driven by that it's hard, right? But out of hard problems come great things. And in the long run, if we can develop multiple equal centers of clinical trials excellence around the globe and take advantage of different ways of collecting data around the globe, we will be better off. So that's decentralization. Hybrid, things to think about when you're thinking about doing a hybrid trial. We know how to collect data on paper. We know how to collect it in an EDC system. We now with DF Engage are experiencing what ePro data collection looks like. We know we can, with DF Discover, do imports of lab data. We're starting to deal with data that's coming from the subject or their personal device. Considerations there, if we're decentralized and collecting this data, if it's lab data, is that measured in the same unit around the world or in the locations where the data is being collected? And if it's if they're the same, what does same really mean? Think about, validated instruments. If you're using a validated data collection instrument, can it be the same in all these parts of the world where you're working? Okay, that's my ask there. As I said early, I have lots of questions. I hope you have lots of questions. I'm hoping to encourage discussion and thought here about these considerations. Also important to think about data privacy, right? There are various regulatory bodies involved. Decentralized security, and how does that fit in with a 21 CFR Part 11 regulation, for example? Does the data need to be centralized at the end? Lots of questions. But like true EV vehicles, we're not there yet, but we're getting there. We are on a path there. Over the last 18 months, we've shown that we can decentralize work. We can and we will decentralize clinical trials. Let's share, let's put our knowledge together. As a community, we can do this. Okay, so this is the end of my introduction, and I would now like to turn back to our moderator, Rebecca, to take over control.
Yep. Well, I don't need to take control of the slides, but thank you. Yeah, thanks, Alex, for framing the theme for this meeting. So many questions. I'm not sure if we'll manage to answer all of them, but as you said, we all are on our way to that. And I think we are already warm up to see what is next. And as you probably know already, it's 2.5 days full of new learnings in which we will share experience from our community to our community, which is awesome. But first things first, if you can go to the next slide, we would like to thank you, our speakers, for the effort of thinking, preparing, and delivering important messages and important work that they are doing. And at DFNet, we have not found a better way to express our gratitude for sharing your time to support the DFUG community than donating a symbolic amount to a nonprofit organization of the speaker choice. So these are some of the chosen organizations. So one more time, thank you to the speakers to put time in here. So yeah, with no further ado, next slide. This is what you can expect from today's meeting. And we will be having a couple of presentations, setting up the stage before a 15 minutes break, followed by an additional 3 speakers. Even though some speakers chosen to be pre-recorded, the structure of every session will be the same from now on, which will be 25 minutes talk, followed by 5 minutes dedicated to question. So as you can imagine, we want this to be a two-way meeting. So we want to encourage you to ask questions to the presenters using the chat, and I will be monitoring the chat for your questions, which I will read to the speakers after their 25 minutes presentation.